Thanks everyone for joining us today for another bi-weekly vlog on important topics for brand development. Today, we're going to be doing an overview of the basics of trademark searching and our pharmaceutical verbal branding projects. We're going to cover a high level on how BrandSimple approaches these trademark searches for our pharmaceutical clients and how this differs from non-pharma trademark research and what that means for BrandSimple and for our clients. Before we dive into trademarks today, we'd like to introduce ourselves and share a little bit about who you're going to be hearing from today. I'm Ashley Tully, BrandSimple's VP and Creative Director. I lead our team of creative specialists, project managers, and trademark specialists. Trademark is such an important part of what we do, and that's what we're going to be speaking about today primarily. Daniel Von Egedy is our trademark expert. All of our trademark filters through him. Daniel, would you like to talk a little bit about your experience?
I'm Daniel Von Egedy, head trademark analyst here at BrandSimple. I train and oversee all our on-staff paralegals and project managers that are hands-on with the trademark screening on all of our projects. All questions pertaining to conflicts are resolved by me with the assistance of the project managers. I'm very happy to talk about pharmaceutical trademarks today.
So Daniel, we know that the pharmaceutical industry is one of the most complex naming industries. Can you talk a little bit about how we tailor our trademark pre-screening process for pharmaceutical projects and how they differ?
Sure thing, Ashley. That's a major point I wanted to touch on today. We treat pharmaceutical trademarks differently than non-pharma marks. We actually treat them differently than law firms or a corporate counsel does because we validate names with both legal scrutiny and regulatory passage in mind, which isn't a knock on external counsel because they don't have to keep track of regulatory. But we create the names so we have the full picture in front of us, and so we can tailor the names in that way. This means we have to account for more for our pharma clients up front. Right away, we want to create viable name options that don't break any clear-cut regulatory rules and are highly unique and distinguishable from other pharmaceutical names within Class 5. We evaluate pharma marks a little bit differently, giving a greater weight to name construction, sound alike, look alike, and lesser weight on the goods and services to distinguish the mark. I'll clarify that a little later in the session. Whereas for a non-pharma mark, the goods and services would have a more equal weight to consider, but that's for another vlog.
Thank you, Daniel. We put a lot of emphasis on name pre-screening prior to ever even presenting names to our clients. This way we can ensure we're putting the best and most viable name options in front of our clients. So Daniel, how exactly does your team determine whether a mark is strong enough to present to a BrandSimple client?
So at the very beginning of my tenure, I wanted to put together kind of an architecture of just a list of all of the things that we have to consider, both for pharma marks and non-pharma marks put together. And I came up with the term, the strength of a mark, which is the overall idea that we're placing the mark or the name that BrandSimple creates against all the elements that go into trademark and regulatory review. These are all of the things here up on the screen we have to consider in determining whether our mark is strong enough to show to a client or if we should knock it out before the presentation stage.
I see a lot on here about likelihood of confusion. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Each of these individual elements is part of a larger question. How likely is it that the name is going to confuse audiences? This has to be looked at in a consumer sense or what it means on the market. Meaning, could the name confuse consumers in any way, either about the indication or the efficacy, or whether they may confuse it with another product, which is a marketing concern and where legal's emphasis lies, as well as in a regulatory sense, meaning could a doctor misprescribe this product? And if they did confuse it with a similar name, how much harm would that cause? Of course, during other stages within the naming process, you want to do a deeper analysis to determine this from a regulatory sense. But with strong upfront vetting, we can avoid presenting names to clients with a clear cause for confusion. There's no process out there that matches what BrandSimple does upfront to vet our names. As a matter of fact, when I got brought on with the company, I thought this would have been an industry standard thing, but apparently it's not. I could talk about this for hours, but to sum up, there is no point in passing a name that could clear trademark but would fail regulatory. We strive to create names that do both, and I think we do it well.
That's great, Daniel. And before we move on, a common question we're asked by our clients is what we mean by keystrokes. Can you explain what that term means and why we look at this ahead of time?
The term keystrokes refers to the way a name is written. This is an important consideration for likelihood of confusion, as many prescriptions are still handwritten. This means you have to factor in how a name is written when evaluating the chances for it being confused with another drug. Specifically, you want to look at upstrokes like L and K and downstrokes such as P and Q. These are valuable features that can set your name apart. This is more of a regulatory concept, a focus on word construction. Legal considers the word as a whole more than not. We try to thread the needle of those two approaches in trademark analysis.
So let's dig into high-risk names and how those are identified. But first, Daniel, would you mind telling us why you highlight class 5 in here?
A good question, Ashley. We're primarily looking at class 5 for pharmaceuticals. Sometimes we accompany this with other relevant classes, usually upon client request. For example, if we know this drug is part of an injectable, that injectable will be competing with many other injectables within the space. So we probably want to also screen in class 10, the trademark class for medical devices. But class 5 is mainly where we are always looking for conflicts, as this is the class for all prescribed pharmaceutical products. As far as the high risk factors, we're looking at knockout considerations, meaning names that are highly similar or identical and have a high likelihood of confusion. I've also outlined some other important considerations that not everyone thinks of when looking at name candidates. So even if you find, like, for instance, a veterinary product in class 5, if it's highly similar or identical, they should be noted and should be considered at the very least a moderate risk. Sometimes pharmaceuticals in the veterinary space can have some crossover components that might be used for humans. They may not be something we're worried about from a regulatory perspective, but they're still in class 5 and could still knock your mark out from a trademarking point of view. Company names are something else we consider. If the mark is identical or highly similar to a large company's name or house mark, they will almost always guard and protect their corporate brand. So we just want to not even run into that situation. We won't show clients something that will cause them trouble down the line. Also, some 1 to 2 letter off marks have an opportunity to coexist, but they need to look at the goods and services of these marks carefully. Also, some 1 to 2 letter off marks have an opportunity to coexist, but you need to look at the goods and services of these marks carefully. Research the product to see if they're in a similar prescribing environment, if they're in a similar market space, if there's a chance that they can be confused by any professionals. If it's a great name and we do see a justification for leaving it in these preliminary stages, we always note the potential conflict and provide our clients with a detailed work product of our pre-screening process so that they can make an informed decision at the end of the day. And we want to see if the conflict is being used in commerce in the first place, how it is being used, and if it's not being used, for how long. Now, for low to moderate, a few things in class 5 we want to know, but not necessarily knock the name out of consideration for. This includes herbicides and pesticides, dental supplies, food supplements, etc. These are so far from a prescribing environment that they won't exist in the same space with your marketed compound. These are the instances where goods carry weight. However, an outside legal counsel may decide to place a different weight on the goods and services than we do. We like to keep it pretty close when it comes to goods and services.
Thank you, Daniel. In closing today, can you talk a little bit about what we call the work product and why this is such a critical deliverable for brand simple projects?
Of course, we always provide a work product with details on our pre-screening analysis to our clients. As you can see from the slide, these reports are packed with useful information, including any conflicting marks that are identified during our in-depth trademark search, a common law search that gives a broader perspective on possible conflicts of the name that may not be registered, It's also our first look into any linguistic problems that could be picked up before it even reaches the regulatory stage. And a soft analysis using FDA's POCA tool and any regulatory comments uncovered by our on-staff pharmacists. The client is able to share this with their legal and regulatory teams. I think this allows them to make the best decision as they select their top names to move forward into internal and external validation and safety testing. Make sure you're getting this document from your branding agency, if it's not us, to see how much due diligence they put up front on the names they're creating, saving you from the pain of having a team favorite that doesn't have a prayer, making it through a PTO office or through a regulatory agency.
Thank you, Daniel. This has been great. I think that's about all we have time for today, but quickly, can you touch on what Powered by Core Search means on this slide, what that logo means to us?
I love this logo. This logo, the Powered by Core Search logo, was actually created for brand symbols used by Core Search. We value our partnership with Core Search. If you don't know, Core Search is like Sagas and other well-known screening tools. Core Search is a professional legal screening platform used by attorneys and businesses globally for trademark clearance and brand protection, including client legal counsel. We exclusively used Core Search to conduct our trademark searches. We have innovated how Core Search is used, and in turn, they encourage similar use to their other clients.
Thank you, Daniel, for this insight in the pharmaceutical trademark screening and its importance in our naming projects. That wraps up our discussion today. We want to thank everyone for listening to our bi-weekly vlogs. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to receive more content from us. And as always, we invite our listeners to reach out to us with any questions about branding and about our world-class methodologies.
Bye, everyone.